Kath and me, we both grew up in Nebraska, a rural area. Kath grew up on a family farm. I grew up outside in a town, a small town, and my grandfather had a farm on the border of the town. So we both have farm backgrounds. And I think if you're a farmer, you have an automatic built-in connection to nature. You're always thinking about the weather, etc. I spent a lot of time with my grandfather, and he was just a wonderful naturalist. Just taught me a lot about, being curious and looking at things. And my parents encouraged that too. I developed a strong affinity for nature when I was very young. I probably knew more about watching birds when I was in the 5th and 6th grade than I do now. I just loved being in nature and still do. These are some snapshots. This is from the lower left here is Sandhill area of Nebraska, a wonderful place. This, of course, is from Miller's Bluff here in La Crosse. So I have always been attracted to nature. It has so many mental, spiritual, physical benefits for me. And I was fortunate enough to make my whole career centered around nature, studying it, explaining it, and just enjoying it. So that's just some background. Now, for those of you who are really interested in this carbon footprint thing, I would really recommend doing your carbon footprint for your household. It just seems like that's a great place to start. If you want to plan a trip to some place in the Northeast, you need a map. This carbon footprint is a map for what the task in front of you is. This is our household carbon footprint about 10 years ago or so. It's set up like the ones we've been talking about. Tons of CO2 produced on the horizontal axis here, produced by burning fossil fuels again, and in these various categories. So this is what our carbon footprint looked like, 35 tons per year, which is a little bit better than average. There's only 2 of us in our house at this point. But still, that's a lot of tons of CO2. So when I started getting into this seriously, one thing that attracted my attention right away was this, just like with our church. This is the carbon footprint that comes from using electricity. And the first step, the easiest step, in my opinion, for any of us to make a really big impact on reducing our carbon footprint is to enroll in a green electricity program. So that is what we did about 10 or 15 years ago. And for those of you that have Excel as your energy provider, Excel makes it very, very easy to enroll in their green electricity program. They call it Renewable Connect. Basically, you do a web search for Excel Energy, and you create an account with Excel Energy. I suspect some of you have already done that. You type in your email and your password. If you don't have a password, you register for one and get one. And you have to look at your energy bill from Excel to type in your account number, your phone number, zip code, etc. And boom, you have an account. It's that easy. Even if you don't enroll in their green electricity program, this website has a wealth of information that I find very useful. It gives you 2 years worth of electricity and natural gas usage, the amount that you spend on your monthly bills, also the amount of electricity, the amount of natural gas that you're using. So it's a wonderful educational resource. It's interesting to see the seasonal ebb and flow of your energy usage. Once you get onto the site, have your account number, click on this program and rebate part of the web, and you navigate to this Renewable Connect website, and it explains how this works. The average person, resident in their service area, uses about 750 kilowatt hours per month. If you enroll in their program and you elect that 100% of your energy comes from a green source, and you can choose whatever percent you want. But if you choose 100%, that will cost you an extra $7.28 per month if you register on a month-by-month basis. You can stop that any month you want. On the other hand, if you're willing to sign up for a 5-year period, that drops down to about $4.65 per month, about a third less. And so it costs the average homeowner between $7 and $5 more a month to get 100% of your electricity from the grid, or your proportion on the grid becomes 100% green if you're willing to pay $7 to $5 per month. I don't think that's, well, it's not unreasonable in my opinion. It's easy to do. You click on enroll now and you sign up online. It's very, very easy to do. You can do it in 15 minutes, 10 minutes. Back to our household carbon footprint, by enrolling in green electricity, watch the electricity part here. After enrolling in a green electricity program, it disappears. And our carbon footprint goes down by about 4 or 5 tons per year, just by doing that. 15 minutes of my time, and that made a big difference. So the next thing that we looked at was natural gas. That natural gas is a fossil fuel, and that generates about 4 tons of carbon dioxide per year in our house. So I got creative here. I looked into installing geothermal heating and cooling in our home. Most people do this when they build their house, and that's probably what should have been done when this house was built, and put it in right at the beginning. That wasn't the case. Our house is about 10 years old when I got this idea. Contacted Snyder Heating and Air, and they said, yeah, we can install it after the fact. So they brought out their drilling rig, dropped a hole about 200 feet down right beside our garage, and installed a loop. It's literally a loop. It's hollow inside. It's like a hose with a thick wall, a thick, tough hose. Drops down about 200 feet. And that loop, they extended under our garage floor, under the foundation of our house, and popped it up in this corner of our basement. They drilled a hole or cut a hole in the cement. That's about a 2-foot square hole right through the floor of our basement. And they were able to pop those tubes right up through that hole. And so these tubes are part of that loop. It's a continuous loop coming from our basement, going out under our floor, down to the ground. There's nothing mechanical out here at all. It's just a loop filled with the fluid. And here's that hole in the basement. So the fluid is coming out from the ground in this upper tube, I think, going over here. Here's the pump that draws that fluid in. This fluid is warmed to the temperature of the ground, which is about 55 degrees or so. Goes into the compressor. This is part of what was installed. It's like an air conditioner operating in reverse. It takes that fluid, extracts the heat from that fluid, compresses it, sends it over to our furnace, just as though this was an air conditioner sending cool fluid over to our furnace to generate cooled air. This generates hot fluid that goes over to our furnace that generates heat, which warms our house. Meanwhile, the fluid has less heat in it, goes back out, down into the loop, gets warmed up again, comes back up, and the whole thing just continues. This uses a fair amount of electricity, but we have green electricity, so it leaves 0 carbon footprint. In the summertime, this process in this box reverses, and our home is air conditioned by the same way. It uses geothermal cooling in this case. So this is a fairly extensive project, but it works, and I'm very impressed by it. One reason for doing this was so that our carbon footprint could be lowered considerably, but I'm thinking about the people who will be buying our home. I want to leave our home set up so the next person, if they elect to have a eco-conscious, they can do the same thing. This furnace, by the way, still operates on natural gas. If you want to use natural gases, you're not locked into doing it. It's very flexible, but we choose to use the geothermal option as much as possible. So back to our carbon footprint, we now eliminated our carbon footprint from electricity. now we can eliminate the natural gas part of our carbon footprint, or nearly so. We use just a few therms of natural gas each year, but basically zero natural gas. For my next project, I'm talking with Kath, lobbying to take a look at this part of our carbon footprint. We do have a hybrid car, but we have two cars and the other one is completely gas. I'm really looking into getting a electric vehicle, and I think we can knock this down to, 3 to 4 tons of CO2 per year. So there's still work to be done. So again, enrolling in Excel's Renewable Connect program is the easiest. It's an impactful thing to do. And I would suggest anybody who's serious about reducing their carbon footprint, start here. And it's easy to do. I'm willing to work with anybody who wants to do this, but is a little bit unsure about how to do this. I'll come over to your home. We can do a phone conversation. We can do a Zoom call. Send me an email. Whatever it takes, I'll help you get signed up for Renewable Connect if that option appeals to you.
So when I was asked to do this, or our family was asked to do this, I thought, what do we have to share, right? Especially after hearing Rob's story and Carlene's story in the past. And then I decided that probably more people are at the stage that I am. I joined Creation Care as someone, as Rob had mentioned too, that really valued nature for its healing, for its just fostering that curiosity, for developing our family time. It was something that was instilled in me by my parents and then have passed on to our family. So when I looked at this, I thought, well, if somebody asked me, what am I doing for creation? I would say that, I'm really at that reduce, reuse, recycle level. And then I thought, well, I guess that goes back to no matter where you are on the journey, right? And in this case, no matter where you are on the journey for Creation Care, you're welcome to learn from the Creation Care team. And now, in the short time that our Creation Care team has formed, I am basically doing a lot of the same, but my lens of what I do has changed. So I am looking at my actions, or our actions, through that lens of carbon footprint. So when I think of reduce, and we've always been kind of the family that will go to Goodwill to buy something instead of always having to buy new, or going to Renew Habitat Center to use materials as part of that reuse and recycle. But we also reduce just how much we use, right, as to electricity. Try to hang out our laundry outside in the basement throughout the year. And now I'm realizing, I can now start to connect that to my own, or our family's carbon footprint. I would say that our journey is one that has not necessarily had that roadmap. And so without that roadmap, we've just been doing a little bit at a time. And we've been obviously trying to be educated about those choices. And so we are changing, learning as we go. One of the things quite some time back, everyone was told to invest in fluorescence as a way to reduce that impact. All right, so we got on the fluorescent bandwagon, we changed out to fluorescence, and now we know that LED is even a better option, which is why you get those free light bulbs for attending here also. So then you have that choice, right? Do you change out all your light bulbs at one time, even though they're not used up. So we're kind of in a slow process of changing those out, very similar to what the church is doing also. Looking at when our light bulbs burn out, we're replacing them by our best choice. To help us do some of that replacement, there's the Focus on Energy partnership with all of the Wisconsin utilities. And once again, this website will be shared with you in a follow-up email. Every 3 years, you can request one of these kits, and there's different versions of it. Basically, it's going to be some sort of light bulbs and some other energy reducing materials. So we recently received our kit and then are choosing to use some of those LED light bulbs to replace the places that the light bulb
on the most.
Yeah, on the most. We have this one light that no matter what we do, it never seems to get turned off as often as it should. I mean, every day we're always like, you left that light bulb on. So we know that that's going to be a starting spot for that change, right? Since joining the Creation Care team, I learned about the Renewable Connect. And as Rob said, you know, on average, it's like $7 to $4 a household. So we joined and we went for the 100% of our electrical energy will come from green energy. And just so you know, our bill is $2.56. We're kind of a typical lacrosse home, which I'll share with you in just a little bit. So, and that's a month to month. We did not make the 5-year commitment, and it's still just $2.56. So it's really hard. It would be hard not to justify, right, to do that for that small of a price and that huge of an impact. When I was on Excel setting that up, then I was also lost in their website as to all of the places that you could go. I ended up in the savings plan. They do have a reduce your carbon footprint site, much simpler than Cool Congregation and not nearly as detailed and valuable, but it's a great place to start if you're like me and you ended up going in there for your Renewable Connect and you just want to get some quick ideas. So once I input our information, it was about maybe a 20-minute job, mostly just because I didn't know all the answers. You get these daily habits: turn off the light bulb or turn off the lights. You know, those are the ones that everyone's like, well, we all know that, right? We've been doing that. Suggestions where ours says, replace your old refrigerator with a more energy efficient refrigerator when it dies, which has been kind of a ongoing conversation in our house. Do we do it when it dies? Do we do it now? And so I guess now we kind of have a calculator that helps us like say, okay, we're going to wait until it goes. If you can hear my husband in the background, he's still like, no, we're not. Because the history in our house actually is when things go is when he's out of town and then I'm trying to figure it out. I'm not very good at that.
No, you're not happy about it.
I'm not, not a happy wife or not a happy mom. All right, so then it also brings up weekend projects, which I found it very interesting that this one was brought up. Nathan was able to go to Maury's home when she was having some energy efficient work being done. And one of the things that they were doing is putting in these smart plugs. And he came home and he said, you know, this is what we need to be doing in our house, which then was confirmed by this. So that will be one of our next projects, looking at these smart plugs to reduce, you know, when you leave you turn off your TV, but it's still plugged in, and that's that vampire load. With doing that and filling this out, I ended up, all of a sudden this pops up my dashboard and it says, I received this reward, which I don't even know how I ended up getting to. but currently I have a $5 gift card for one of these places, and we're like 100 points away from a $10 gift card. So if you need a little bit of motivation to do something, that could be your motivation. Obviously, we know that we do not make these choices just based on that, but those are kind of those like little extra perks as you're on this journey. So I want to talk a little bit about our house. Our house is the typical 1930s home in La Crosse, 1.5 story home. It was what we needed. It's 900 and some square footage. But when our third child arrived in our 2-bedroom home, we found it was getting quite tight. So in our, the kids got the large bedroom. So I think it was about 11 by 10 size bedroom. And we had the girls in bunk beds, and our son was in a toddler bed. And with that and one dresser, it maxed out the bedroom. So we obviously were trying to figure out what we were going to do for the future. And if you've met our son now, who's on here, he's 6 foot, at least 6 foot tall. So that toddler bed wouldn't have worked for him the rest of his life, obviously. So we decided after looking at possibly moving, that for us economically, what we could afford was to raise our roof. Of course, everything is always even more complicated. First, we had to remove our asbestos siding, and then we were able to raise the roof. By doing this, it did give us access to that wall space, which we'll talk a little bit more about here. So now we have a home that is 4-bedroom, and it is about 1,600 square feet, which was a concern, right? Because obviously with our philosophy of reduce, we had to use a lot of materials that have been produced and shipped to our location, the machinery to make all of this. But at the time, this was our best option. And I think we are very happy with our option that we took. One thing I want to point out, the other thing we did during this time is when our house was still just the 900 square footage, we have a birch, and then there's a oak over on this side that were small enough that they could go in our tiny little pickup and be planted here. And now we also have the trees providing some of that shade to our home. So by doing this and having our home open like this, we were actually able to add in insulation where we weren't able to get to prior. We had tried to insulate our attic at the time, but this allowed us to get that insulation into those hollow walls. Also, the windows that were put in, of course, are more energy efficient. We still don't have a mountaintop view from our window, but more energy efficient. And the other thing that we were able to do as part of this was add in a programmable thermostat. What was most amazing about this whole journey, besides the 1 year of not having a roof or siding and all of those, was that we added like 700 square footage to our home, and our heating and electric bill did not change at all. And the reason I want to share this is obviously you're not going to just go out and build onto your home, but by making some of these changes, and we know that windows can be expensive, but sometimes when you just are remodeling one space, you might do a window at a time. Programmable thermostats are actually fairly reasonable. If you haven't insulated in areas that you actually have access to, those choices can really reduce that carbon footprint because your energy bill would go down. Ours obviously didn't go down because we added to our home so much.
I think there's a couple important points. One
Thank
is,
you.
when she says windows, we didn't touch the downstairs windows.
Oh, right.
These are just the new windows you buy to put upstairs. So our downstairs windows today still remain what were put in 1930. And obviously can make a big change there, but that's one we haven't made. And the second thing there. Oh, the other part was the original furnace in this house was an old oil furnace. And so all the ductwork was duct for oil, huge, and the temperature just was never balanced out in the house. And when we put on the addition, what we did is modified each room, so each room had a return air, which before it didn't. And we put dampers in the ductwork so that, depend on seasonally, we can adjust the airflow to the rooms to make them comfortable, or totally shut off air to a room if it's not being used. And so those are just real little, and actually, at the time I put in all the dampers myself. I don't know if I remember how to do it for somebody else, but really just cheap. It's just having a couple of pieces of metal and knowing how to cut it and make it work. But just that simple thing, just controlling the airspace. And then we also put in ceiling fans, which we never had before.
Right. So, like I said, we don't necessarily have that map to decide where we're going. It's mostly been determined for us by need, or whatever we could financially afford that was to the best of the best for the environment within our budget. So now we are looking at the future, and one of the things we're looking at is our one-car garage needs to be replaced. And we are looking at designing it so that solar panels can be put onto that. So as part of our bid and part of our plan, we have the information from an solar installing company that has worked with others in La Crosse, so that we make sure that our design would be the best for that. We also are looking at, we need to up the voltage that would go to the garage. And so we're making sure that what the wiring to the garage would allow for potentially a future electric vehicle. Not saying that that's in our near future, but all of the choices we're making, we try to keep all of those options open. And so I guess I just want, did you want to say anything else before I conclude?
Well, I was going to say, with the electric car thing, two things. One is, if the panels are sitting on the garage and you're putting it back to the grid, you have to have the wiring set up. And since the yard will be dug out, the garage, we're asking to pre-wire for all that, or have capable capacity for it. But then in addition, make sure that we have the proper amperage for the service for our house, which currently is only 100. So we're going to jump up to at least a 200 amp service that'll allow then the charging of future vehicles, as they become more available, and maybe we do transition. So she was correct on that. And
thank you.
But, so, and a lot of our choices are not necessarily, it'll be more expensive now, but if we were to have to put it in 5 years from now and change everything after putting the garage in, it'd be a lot more expensive to do all that wiring.
So from a Creation Care team member, I'm hoping that our less than perfect journey, I hope all of these journeys inspire you to find out where you are on your journey to reducing our collective carbon footprint, and what can you do in your home, in your lifestyle, and also hope that you and your family and your future family will be able to have that time in nature to heal, to grow, and to develop memories.